So welcome to part 4 of our ethics. And this part here is the part 4 of the ethical standards. And we're going to review this, especially for part 4, because it's the main bulk of the entire ICF Code of Ethics. And a lot of the questions will come from this part here as well. And this is the part that has several sections that we want to spend a little time on. And each section will kind of quiz everyone to test your understanding as well. So here, this part will take some time to kind of go through because this part will be most critical out of all the other parts. Yeah. Okay. So part 4. What on earth is part 4? Part 4 of the ICF Code of Ethics has 5 key sections. Okay. So these 5 key sections, what are they? These are ethical standards for the ICF professionals. So, i.e., professional coaches, ACC, PCC, MCC, ACTC, or coach in training as well. So you notice that in our previous videos and in previous series as well, we talk about what is ICF professionals, what do they comprise, what are they, and there are 5 key sections here that we will look at. One, it's an agreement for client or sponsor engagement. Number 2, confidentiality and legal compliance. Number 3, professional conduct and conflict of interest. Number 4, commitment to delivering consistent value. And number 5, professional integrity and accountability. Now, this part here on part 4 focuses on professional activities conducted by us as a coach, whether as an internal coach or an external coach. So regardless whether you're internal or external, this part will apply to you. Yeah. So, and this is also important, and it's not just for formal coaching relationships. It also exists in informal ones as well. Okay. So we're going to go through each one of these parts, and you'll see that part 4, section 1, part 4, section 2, these are what it means. So when you look at the sections later, you'll see this thing called section 1. So each one of this is referring to a particular section of the conversation. Okay. So when we go in deeper, just remember when I refer to section 1, it means section 1 of part 4, section 2 of part 4, and we have all the different standards. So what ICF defines this is that for each one of these sections, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they are called standards. So you'll find that standard 1.1, standard 1.2, these are referring to standards. And these are standards upheld by ICF professionals. And that's why you have ethical standards here. Okay, so when you come across standards, it refers to part 4 of the entire Code of Ethics. Okay, so welcome to section 1 of the standards, which is on agreements for client and sponsor of coaching engagement. Now, if we recall, what ICF core competency is this? This is ICF core competency number 3. And because we are in the Code of Ethics, we are also referencing competency number 1, right? Which is on ethics and professional standards. Yeah. Okay. So let's take a look at section number 1. Section number 1 has 2 key standards. So this is standard 1.1 and standard 1.2. We're going to go into standard 1.1 first. So it says here that communicate before coaching begins with coaching clients or client, sponsor or sponsors, and or other involved parties that the coach is in a direct relationship with, to explain the nature of coaching and to co-create a coaching agreement regardless of roles, responsibilities, confidentiality, financial arrangements, and other aspects of coaching engagements. So here, it's the first time you come across this word, co-create a coaching agreement. In the ICF competency number 3, it says partner. So for partnering and co-creation, ICF defines it as equal, basically the same thing. So when you see partnering or see co-creation, they basically mean the same thing in the ICF language. Okay. Now, the reason why sometimes you see co-creation, sometimes you see partnering, is because when it's translated into other languages, it doesn't translate so well for co-creation. So sometimes ICF replace it with partnering. Yeah, so that's the reason. So that's why you see sometimes they replace co-create with partnering, co-creation. They're all the same thing, but it's more for the translation purposes, and that you see some of these deviations. Now, what on earth is 1.1? So let's go a little deeper. So there are several elements here. These are also found in ICF competency 3.1 all the way to 5. Okay, so this is the core competency portion as well. So standard 1 refers to the coaching agreement, both in the formative sense as well as in the sessional sense. You look at these things here, these are what you do before officially starting the coaching conversation. Things like allowing the client to understand what's the difference between coaching, mentoring, facilitation, and other roles, and also what's my role as a coach, what is your role as the client, what is the role of our sponsor, HR, or other coaches. Right? Sometimes you may have 2 coaches, sometimes you have 3 coaches. Some organization I know that they have like 3 different coaches for an individual person. So they end up having some confusion with the client because one coach focuses on maybe a strategic perspective, another coach focuses on relational, another coach focuses on personal. So sometimes there's different roles. So it's important for the client to understand the different roles and responsibilities as well. And this part here, responsibility, is very important because you'll be tested on this. There'll be responsibility of the role of a coach, responsibility of the client. Now, what are the responsibilities here? So let's go a little deeper. Responsibility of coaching outcome is whose? Who do you think it belongs to? Responsibility of coaching outcome. It is not both, but more of the client, right? The client is responsible for what their desired outcome is. Okay, responsibility of the coaching process and holding space, that is the coach. So typically, we see this thing as the outcome is the ownership of the outcome is the client, the ownership of the actions, the commitment is the client. So when you hear the word outcome, actions, commitment, okay, these are all client. What I do as a coach, challenge the client, hold the space for the client, allow the client to process, read back to the client, this entire process, right? But at the end, the ownership responsibility is the client. So when you see the scenario saying that something like around the outcome or accountability, who holds the accountability is with the client. Yeah. Okay. So this responsibility. The other one is confidentiality terms. So confidentiality terms, there's two parts. If we recall the earlier part, we talk about when is it okay to break confidentiality, when is it okay not to break confidentiality, and what are the boundaries of confidentiality as well, because there are different degrees of confidentiality. Yeah. Financial agreements as well. So there is agreements between the sponsor who is providing you the financials or the client who may be as well. And of course, the communication boundaries. What should be recorded, what should not be recorded. For example, in the coaching process, is it okay for the coach to write notes? Is it okay for the coaches to record the coach digitally or physically? So these are things to think about. Some organizations, they don't allow the coach to record any notes at all. Everything must be disposed of. And so this is something also to take note of, what is the best ways of maintaining data privacy for the client. Okay, so for example, you're hired by a corporation, the coach and middle manager, and the sponsor wants weekly updates on the progress. And you clearly state that only general themes and not personal disclosures will be shared unless the client consents, and you may include this boundary in a tripartite agreement. So sometimes the HR, maybe the boss, maybe the supervisor, maybe the director, maybe the group director or the C-1 or C-level may come to you and say, hey, can you tell me what was discussed? Can you help me influence the person? Can you help me do this? Can you help me get that? When you realize it crosses the boundary, that's when you have to raise this accordingly to the right authority or the right stakeholder. And this is also important where it says here that what is it okay for us to disclose? What is not okay? Generally speaking, whenever the HR or sponsor comes to me, I will redirect the person to the client. Okay, so the client can disclose up to how much the client wants to disclose, entirely up to the client. If the client wants to disclose every single thing, it's up to the client. So if we can invite the sponsor to go directly to the stakeholder or to the client itself or to the talent, we allow the sponsor to go directly to them and invite them to share with the HR how was the coaching progress, what was the updates, and how did they feel about the progress so far. Okay, so this is this part here. Okay, any questions so far? Okay. Okay, so it sounds easy. Now let's go to this part here. And we call this the interpretive statements from the ICF. At section number 4, this is also found, I'll be sharing this with all of us as well. This is section number 4 of the standards, and that's where ICF has expounded a little bit more on the details of what they mean. Okay, so this part here is going to be very important for us. I'm going to highlight some key aspects, and the rest I'll invite all of us to read, which will be found in your part C of the learning portal as well. Okay, so here, If you cannot sleep tonight, this is where you can read this. Okay. Now, there's a few key things that you want to read here. Not everything that is so important. The important part here in the standard 1.1 is this part here. Share the coaching process and its benefits to the client. Okay. So who's the one sharing? The coach is the one sharing the process. Clarify the expectations regarding coaching details and outcomes. So the scenario could be around the case where there's a mismatch of expectations. Then they ask why was there a mismatch of expectations? Well, because there wasn't a chance for the client to clarify the expectations earlier. So this is the case when, if we come back here, this part here, responsibilities. Usually we have what we call chemistry sessions. So you can see this word chemistry sessions, discovery sessions. Okay, discovery sessions or onboarding sessions, or whichever sessions they call it. They have different terms for different organization. They will say, okay, we're going to have this initial kickoff sessions. Okay, so they may have kickoff sessions, and they say, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to be processing it. So based on that, once everybody is confirmed, everybody has a common understanding, then we move on to the next stage. So clarify all the intentions at that stage. We call this part here, everything here, as formative agreement. Okay, so formative agreement. Okay. In another language, sometimes we call it formative contracting. In another language, sometimes we call this formative partnership. Okay, so there are different language that people use. Now, also in the coach-client relationship, sometimes some organizations call clients as coachees, but this is a terrible word to use. Why? Because coachee dictates that the coach is above the client. It's not on equal grounds. So usually organizations will be encouraged to use another term rather than coachee. Sometimes we encourage organizations to use the word talents. So you can see this word talents coming out. Sometimes you will see words like coach and the leader. Okay, so they may use different terms to kind of use it so that it doesn't sound like coachee. Right? Coachee it's a low level. So we always encourage organizations to use terms that uplift the individual so that the individual doesn't seem to take alignment to that coach, unless it's in a different relationship. So there's some cases where a coachee relationship would be more a better relationship. There's some element, sometimes, but not all the time. So in the coaching practice, we always say that coaching, it's partnering, which is on equal grounds. Okay, so these are different words that you may come across. Okay, now let's go a little bit deeper here. There's this part here where we talk about discuss the rights and responsibilities of all parties, including clients, sponsors, supervisors, and HR personnel. You'll find that the number one critical factor, it's usually with the HR and the supervisor, because the direct supervisor of the sponsor and the HR have two differing outcomes. HR outcomes are driven by the CHROs and the maybe the command or maybe the group HR policies, whereas the supervisor has an immediate vision of what they want out of the coaching session with the clients. So there will be a case where there's a conflict of two parties, one with the supervisor, one with the HR personnel. So what should you do as the coach? How would you navigate that? Okay. So here, very importantly, it's that the ICF believes in this idea of co-creation that we talked about earlier, and must give explicit rights, roles, and obligations under the ICF Code of Ethics as well. Okay. Now, especially if you're using any coaching agents or platforms. So sometimes some coaches may be using an agent to represent them, or sometimes some coaches may be using a platform to represent them. So it's important for us to uphold that. Now, the standards also call for ICF professionals, which is ourselves, we are the ICF professionals, to also highlight something very, very important. Okay, what are we highlighting here? So the standard calls for ICF professionals to share in writing or verbally the code of ethics and ethical conduct review. Okay, so that means us as the ICF coach or the ICF professional, right, to share the code of ethics. So when we meet our clients, it's important for them to also know that we are governed by this code of ethics. Yeah. Okay. So sometimes some people may say, hey, should I share? Yes, you should share the code of ethics with the individual. Yeah. Okay. So this is where it's important. So you will definitely see a question that comes up about this part here. Who should have access to the code of ethics? The coach, the client, the sponsor, or all? So the answer will be all of them should have an access to it. Okay. So here, Okay, here, ICF also encourages having written agreement if culturally appropriate as best practices that both supports ICF professionals in all parties. So this is the part that in the past we had a discussion of ICF because not all culture would prefer writing. And this is something that also raised up with ICF because previously they say, oh, everything must be written, written, written. But some cultures, they say, hey, our word is our bond. We don't need anything writing, right? So using our word as our bond. So you see some cultures stating that, okay, the cultural boss says that, from that particular culture says that this is what we're going to do. But it's not kept to it. What should we do? So then you apply culturally sensitive agreements according to that culture. Okay. So here, in the coaching agreement, the ICF professional needs to clearly identify which legal frameworks will be used to manage the possible conflicts. Now, what is this? This is your local country and also the organization that the organization is based in. If your organization is an MNC, which is a multinational company, then there will be certain legislation that will be applied to that particular company. So, for example, if I'm based in Singapore and I'm coaching someone, say, for example, in Japan, or if I'm based in Taiwan and I'm coaching someone in the Americas, what are some of these legislations that I need to be aware of? Okay, that will be very, very important. Okay, so this is something for the ICF professional to kind of take note of. Okay, so let's ask everybody here: are you familiar with the mental health hotline? Yes. Yeah, so very important for those in Singapore. You need to know the mental health hotline in Singapore. Right? For those of you who in other parts of the world, you also need to be also aware of your own country's mental health helpline and hotline. Okay, so here I'll share with you what Singapore have. Okay, so Singapore has recently launched this one called the Mind SG. Very, very, very important. Part of the coach. Okay, so this will support coaches who are providing coaching services in Singapore, right? And even if you're providing coaching services out of Singapore, you can also use this as a good resource for them. Now, here you'll find all the different topics here, which the local government has provided for, and you can use this as useful resources to help with self-assessment tools and all the other things here. Also, very, very important, these are the various helplines. So in every country, there will be a helpline associated to your country. In Singapore, it's 1771. Okay, so this is a 24-hour helpline. If you face any mental health crisis or any mental health urgent need, you don't call 999, you don't call 911, you don't call 119, right? We call 1771. So as a coach, during my onboarding with the client, I would let my client know, have access to this link of healthhelp.sg. Let them know about SOS of Singapore. There'll be SOS of Taiwan, SOS of Japan, as of other countries as well. Let them know what is the helpline, what are the resources they can tap on, and what are the financial funding they can tap on. So before I start the coaching process, so that if I notice signs of mental health issues with the individual, I can immediately refer to them to the resources that we talked about on the onboarding process. Okay, so this is very, very important for all the coaches here. So you see here, first stop for mental health. So if you come across a question that talks about legislation, then say, okay, based on the local country's legislation. In the case of Singapore, the 24-hour helpline is 1771 or 66691771. Very important. Okay, yeah. So these are something for everyone to take note of. Okay, that is for this part here on 1.1. Okay, now some more, there's another part here that's going to be very important. When coaching engagements are facilitated through a third party, such as a coaching platform, agent, or organization outsourcing coaching services, the ICF professional is responsible for ensuring their own conduct and professional practices towards directly involved stakeholders. So this is the client, sponsor, and other immediate participants to fully comply with ICF Code of Ethics, even when the other third party maintains the primary contractual agreement with the client or the sponsoring organization, and the ICF professional holds a separate agreement only with the third party. Now, what on earth is this talking about? Sometimes, for a large-scale coaching engagement, a company A may engage you as a coach to be on their board, and they bid the project. The company A has a direct line of communication with the contracted HR agent, HR of that organization. So they have an official agreement. But the company didn't tell the HR about this ICF Code of Ethics. What should you do? Typically this is what happens in the real world. right? Because large B2B or G2G, or B2G, or some huge companies may have you as a coach, as one of the associate coach with their large organization. So we will not know whether they have communicated clearly the ICF code of ethics with the other person. So what this states here is that it is still your responsibility, even whether they communicated or didn't communicate, it's still your responsibility as a coach to communicate with your client or with any third party relevant to the engagement, to let them know about the ICF code of ethics. So that if you see any deviation, it's important to highlight to them that this is deviating from the ICF code of ethics. Okay, so this is something important for us to take note of, especially for those of us who have been engaged by a third party. Okay. Now, also, special attention should be given to potential dilemmas that may arise when working with platform providers. Now, why is this so important? Because recently there are a lot of platforms out there that are seconding a lot of coaches to be on the platform. They say, hey, Chris, let me help you, and let me help you, let me feature you on the platform. And then they start selling, but they do not tell the client exactly what they're up for. So, very important for us to also clarify with these platform providers what are the roles, confidentiality, adherence to ethical standards, and whether there's any uncertainty or any platform guarantees confidentiality, okay, or to what extent that is, whether it's PDPA, GDPR, or other kind of data privacy. Okay. So this is the responsibility of the coach with the platform provider. If at any point of time you feel the platform provider is not providing you that coverage, then it's important for you to make a decision whether this is something that you still want to partner with the platform or not. Okay, so recently there's a few platforms that offers a very good incentive for coaches, but they want the coaches to sell for them. So the coaches are in conflict. So should the coaches sell some other products, like for example, some health products as they coach the client for health coaching? So some coaches get very, very stuck and they feel in the dilemma. Yeah. So here, very, very importantly, that ICF provides some sample coaching agreements, which is found on the ICF website, right? So there are sample agreements under the ICF portal. This can be found in ICF member toolkit. So I shared one recently with the ICF Taiwan chapter on the sample agreement. Yeah, this can be found there. You'll use that and then modify it according to your own needs and your own clientele. Okay, so that's standard 1.1. Good. Easy. Okay, so standard 1.1, very, very easy. Now, standard 1.2, you see that this part here, respecting the right to terminate, right? So client and sponsor must have the autonomy to end the coaching relationship at any time for any reason. This question would definitely come out, and this will be your answer. Okay, so this one, at least you have at least one question like this, right? They say something about some situation, the client don't feel any value from the session. What should you do? A, B, C, D, right? The best answer is the client has the right to also end the coaching relationship at any time for any reason if they don't feel that they're getting any value. So for example, halfway through a 10-session package, your client requests to pause engagement due to burnout. Even if prepaid, the coach must honor their right to exit or revisit the agreement. Okay. Now, we can say that this is, this is not fair to the coach. So you have to communicate this to the client officially, whether it's through prepayment or post-payment, or in different trenches or in different parts. However, there's some coaches who will also highlight that that very importantly, that the entire process, it's no there will not be any refunds. So if you decide to have that in your clause, then let the client know ahead of time that there will be no refunds. Okay, but if the client so chooses, you have to kind of honor that accordingly as well. Okay, now let's take a look at a little more detail here. Okay, the key word here is subject to the provision of the agreement. Okay, that's the key word here. So here, a best practice is to have a clear refund policy written in the agreement outlining the terms. So sometimes the best refund policy statement could be that the client can defer for 1 year for whatever reason. Or if the client did prepayment, maybe you can say, hey, we'll allow deferment of another 6 months and it'll continue. Or maybe the client faced with some special circumstances, health issue, family issue, or something like that. And that's where you can have something to support the client as well. Okay, so this is the refund policy. So ICF professionals must always respect and accept the client's request to end the coaching relationship immediately if the client wishes. Okay, so this is something very, very important. And ICF professional may decide to terminate the relationship provided they honor the involvement of the client, sponsor, and stakeholders. So likewise, on your side as well, you can end. If you notice something that's amiss with the sponsor or the client, and again, communicating both ways to ensure the respect for the initial agreements between all stakeholders as well. Okay. In either scenario, ICF professional may offer the client to a closure session to receive feedback, making clear that such a session is entirely voluntary and never obligatory. So sometimes when we want to close the session, we may say, hey, okay, before I close the session, can I have a last session with you to hear feedback from you? You can have that, but if the client says, I don't want to, then it's okay. Right. So if the client prefers to terminate the coaching relationship without any further sessions, including the closure session, the ICF professional must honor the decision without exerting pressure. Why is this so? Because there have been ethical complaints against coaches who force the client to come and attend the closure session only to be upsold to another package. So then the client actually complained to ICF, and ICF launched a whole investigation. Right. So that's why this exerting any pressure to kind of say, oh, okay, let's upsell you to another program, let's upsell you to something else, or maybe you can buy my product. So this is something very, very important for us to take note of. Okay. In the event of termination, the ICF professional must support and encourage the client to seek services of another ICF professional or an alternate professional resources, especially when both parties agree the client would benefit from this change. Okay, so this is another potential question that may come out as well. If the client doesn't feel that they are getting any value from it, what are some options? So one of the possible options is seek another service of another ICF professional or another coach. Okay, so this is something you take note of. Now, here you see that this is also drawn from standard 4.3 and at the later part of this section as well. So later we cross-reference with standard 4.3 to kind of deepen our understanding of 1.2. Okay, good. At this stage, any questions for this part here for 1.1 and 1.2? This will be taken in reference in section number 4 and also ICF core competency 3 on the coaching agreement. Any questions from anyone? Okay, good. If there's no questions, we're going to dive into our questions to have a little quick test of our understanding. So once I read, I will read out the whole question for our friends who have special circumstances, who might be visually impaired or who needs help with understanding this as well. So we cater to all the needs of every individual. So what I'll do, I'll read out the question, I'll read out the 4 options and invite everybody to just post your answers in the section below. And feel free to also unmute yourself if you would like to share your thoughts. Okay, good. So question number 1. Before beginning a new engagement with a corporate client, you are introduced by HR to the coachee and HR says, we'll sort out the paperwork later. Just start helping them. They really need support now. What should you do first? A, begin coaching the client, noting the urgency and sort out agreement details later. B, set up an informal conversation with the client and HR to clarify expectations, but avoid a formal contract until trust is built. C, pause the start of coaching until roles, confidentiality, and financial agreements are clarified and co-agreed. Or D, ask the client if they're comfortable proceeding informally and document their verbal consent. What would be your answer? Okay, so we're seeing most of us say C. So C is the correct answer. Okay, so C is the best answer. So which is pause. Okay, so why? Because both must be co-agreed or co-created. Okay, so that's question number 1. Question number 2. You're engaged by a university to coach several students under a leadership development initiative. One of the students says, I want to talk about my depression in this session. Is that okay? Which is the best ethical step before proceeding? A, respect the student's wishes and allow the topic since they initiated. B, shift the topic gently to avoid stepping into therapy territory. Or C, review the coaching agreement to ensure both coach and client understands the boundaries of coaching versus therapy. Or D, inform the university sponsor and seek guidance on whether this topic is allowed under the program. A, B, C, or D. Okay, so we have C, C, C. Okay, that sounds simple. Answer is C. Okay, so it's important to clarify why, so that we understand whose roles and responsibilities are each. Okay, and ensuring the boundaries of it. And this is where I mentioned earlier about this mental health guide. The ICF also has a white paper on when to refer to client for mental health assistance as well. So you need to read that white paper as well, which will help you. These are found in our learning portal. Okay, so for those who need references, or in the learning portal. Okay, good. Question number 3. Midway through a 12-session engagement, your client informs you that they like to discontinue coaching due to personal reasons. Your contract offers no refund for unused sessions. What is the ethically aligned response? A. Reiterate the refund policy and encourage the client to continue so their investment is not wasted. B. Honor their right to exceed and explore how to bring closure even if no refund is provided. C. Offer to hold the remaining sessions later when the client feels ready to return. Or D. Ask the sponsor if coaching can be transferred to another participant. A, B, C, or D? Okay, B. Oh, looks easy. Okay, so everyone got it correct. Is it B? Answer is B. Okay, so honor their right to exceed and explore how to bring closure. Okay. Question number 4. You are coaching a leader who sponsor emails you meet engagement asking, can you let us know if you're opening up about any challenges? What's the most ethically aligned next steps? A. Respond by sharing only high-level themes to preserve confidentiality. B. Contact the client to ask whether they are comfortable with you responding. Or C. Decline to respond and cite client confidentiality. Or D. Revisit the coaching agreement with both sponsor and client to clarify boundaries of information sharing. A, B, C, or D? Okay, so D. Oh, Desmond say B. It's only one B. Everyone else say D. Okay, so let's hear Desmond. Why would you choose B?
I guess because this is a request. I mean, I guess D is also, yeah, on hindsight, I think that's also a possible answer. But I thought first instinct is if it's you should check with the client whether they're comfortable disclosing, yeah, anything from the conversation, citing confidentiality principle. Yeah.
So actually, B and D are also correct, but which is the more correct? So you'll find a lot of questions like this. The best correct answer is D, which is revisit the coaching agreement with both of them before contacting the client and see whether they are responsible, whether they're comfortable with you, are comfortable with you responding to them. Okay, so usually we will go back to the coaching agreement, see what is it stated there before acting on it. So B is like you're really taking action, right? Whereas D, it's the first step before you take the action, which is revisiting the coaching agreement. So that's why D will be the better answer, because you are revisiting first before choosing how to respond. Is it to decline, contact, or respond to them? Okay. Question 5. A client expresses dissatisfaction with their sessions and wants to end the coaching after 3 of a contracted 6 sessions. They request a partial refund. What should guide your ethical response? A. Refund the remaining balance without question to preserve trust. B. Refer to the original agreement and uphold the financial terms strictly. C. Discuss their reasons, acknowledge their right to exceed and explore what ethical closure would look like. Or D. Offer a discounted rate for the sessions already conducted to meet halfway. Okay, so all these answers are correct, but which is the most correct? Okay. So finally we see some difference. Some C, some B's. Okay, some B's, some C's. Okay, let's hear the B people. The B people. People who say B. Why you chose B?
I think maybe it's because I don't think there's a need to discuss ethical closure. Even though I agree that acknowledge their right to exit, that one quite critical. But I mean, and not right. Yeah, so no need to do. I mean, no need to explore what is ethical closure. That's what I think.
So that's why you choose B to refer to original agreement. Okay. How about those who choose C? I saw like quite a number also choose C. What are your thoughts about C? Let's hear Shirley.
Yeah, because just now you mentioned that it's up to the clients and the coach to decide together whether to be refunded or not to be refunded. So it's both joint decision or after their conversation or discussion. That's why I choose C.
Okay. So it sounds like C, D looks okay. And the key word here is the word strictly. Right. So B, you have this word, follow it strictly. Whereas the C has this more open, like let's discuss. So should we follow strictly or should we open for discussion? So what does the answer say? The answer says C, right? Which is discuss. Okay. So why? Because we want to give the client an option, right? So if here does not say something strictly, okay, then it's a possible option. But the key word here that kind of like was a bit tricky was the word strictly. So the role of the coach is not to kind of follow it strictly, but we open the discussion first. Okay. Yes, Chris.
I find this very confusing because if that's the case, then there's room for misinterpretation, right? Because if you need to discuss, and then they may interpret your discussion of reasons as like you're trying to convince them not to quit. Whereas B, because it's follow the book, no need to think about whether you have misinterpreted it. I find this question very confusing. If C is the answer.
So that's why you see in C, you after discuss, you acknowledge the right to exit. So it doesn't mean that they cannot exit. You can exit, but we just like to understand a little bit more. But whereas B, it's the financial terms. So which means that if let's say I say no refund, then no
Yeah,
refund.
but with all the questions that we've answered so far, I don't think we've come across one that is so-called a less correct answer just because the word strictly is there, right?
No.
It seems to me the most of these ethical questions, it's always by the book one. How come suddenly got one question that strictly throws B off?
Because now we're entering this section called part 4 of standard 1. So in part 4, you see all these standards. So the standards will then give you that bandwidth to play around with, and that's why only in part 4. That's why I start using this other document to help all of us to kind of understand it a bit deeper. This is what ICF calls the insights and considerations for part 4. Only part 4 has this. So you find that part 4 has a lot more nuance and consideration, and that's why here they don't say strictly, they say respect all rights, right? And then they also said something about where you can discuss with them, communicating the decision. So a lot more like openly having the conversation with them.
So when we take the exam, does the question say which part is coming from?
No.
Oh, then we have to to know whether strictly, not strictly is going to
So
matter.
you need to understand the question, and then you know which standard is it referring to, right?
Wow.
So for a question like this, you know the standard is from 1.1, 1.2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they will not give you like, oh, this is from this part of that. Yeah, so they're not so nice.
Wow. Wow.
Okay,
Okay.
so which means that for the code of ethics, you really need to kind of not say memorize, but understand like, okay, which section it is coming from. Yeah.
Yep. Oh gosh, I agree.
Okay. Desmond.
Yeah, I thought maybe because this is all revolves around ethics. So kind of that's kind of the keyword. Whereas when the answer B is you're talking about it's a transaction, so that makes it very commercial and very transactional as opposed to the overall ethics in the coaching practice and agreement. Yeah, that's my take.
Yep. So you find that the financial kind of agreements, whenever it comes to this like very strictly agreement, it's always to kind of have the open discussion with them. Whereas the others, let's say a no will be mentoring, therapy versus coaching. Those will be a very hard line. But whereas in this case about client want to refund, want to cancel, want to terminate, so then it's a lot more nuanced because it's not so like strict, like close. You cannot do anything. It's also giving that space for them to kind of say, okay, I want to discuss a little bit more.
So, Jared, for the sake of discussion, if, for example, like I said, my biggest concern would be when you have this option of discuss, it may connote this thought that you want to convince the client not to exit, right? So, if this answer C, if you take away acknowledge their right to exit, just discuss their reasons and explore what ethical culture would look like. Will B now become more right, or is still the same?
So if let's say now without this,
Yeah.
okay, so let's say we cancel out this part here,
Yeah.
and then you see something like this,
Yeah.
now it's even harder for you to choose
Yeah,
because
no.
so now you have B and C because they're both very close, but it will be very hard for a question to be like this because it's too close.
Close already.
Yeah, too close really.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, usually they give something like this,
Yep.
so that to trick you, and then after that, say, oh no, actually you're still allowed to. Yeah, so this is the trick part, but then actually, no, we did say is acknowledge the right to exit.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, Ken, thanks.
Okay. Good. Okay. So what ICF essentially is trying to say is also that sometimes, yes, we may say that no refund. Okay, maybe they sign no refund. But, let's say they don't feel right, then what should you do? Strictly follow or no refund. Well, we could do that, right? Or we could discuss their reasons, acknowledge the right to exit, and explore what ethical disclosure could look like. So, for example, in the case of the local land of the law, which is under the tort law or under case law or under contract law in Singapore, what would the ethical disclosure look like? So, let's say under ethical closure in the Singapore setting, it's okay. No refund means no refund. Okay, no refund. But if maybe in a different country, they allow for the space for the individual to negotiate. That could also happen. So we this ethical closure means what? It means that you refer to the legislation of the land that will provide you the best ethical framework for you to close the session. Even let's say a client expresses dissatisfaction with their sessions and wants to end the coaching session after one session only, what should we do? Okay, so now it's 3. What about 1? What if they finished 5 and left 1 more? Okay, so these are also some of the scenarios that could happen. They only finish 1. Then they request for all the refund? Is it possible? So that will go back to your refund policy and also the legislation of the law of the land, whichever country we belong to. Right. So some countries, like in the US, they have other liability insurance and other liability laws that kicks in place depending on the states you belong to as well. So this is something to be very careful when you kind of word it in your contract with the client. Okay, so if contracting a large company, I always say please get a lawyer. If it's just individual, like one-on-one, let's say today I engage Chris engaged me for the service, then it's based on verbal confirmation whether we're okay or not, right? Because it's just one-on-one on an individual basis. So at an individual basis, you can do verbal, you can do written. On a larger scale organization perspective, to protect yourself as a coach, always get a lawyer who understands the law for the land to word the contract or the exit clause so that it protects yourself. Yeah. Okay. Any questions from anyone for this part? Desmond.
Yeah, so just to clarify, when you talk about ethical closure and also in the other document, this refers to both like the financial sort of refund kind of arrangements also. It's not just about the bring a closure for the coaching sessions itself. I mean, it involves these other administrative issues. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
Right.
Everything, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, good. Anyone else have any questions for this part? Okay. Now, what you'll find that for this particular standard 1, 1.1 and 1.2, they are in conjunction with other standards as well and other core competencies, particularly competencies 3. So you find that this part here is quite closely related to a few other standards later that we'll discuss. Okay, but this one gives you a broad overview of agreements.